Hey guys, Cam here from 9 to 5 Google, and tons of companies are bringing out fantastic big phones. These are two of the best ones currently available on the market, the Moto X Pure or Moto X Style and the iPhone 6s Plus. And I'm going to compare them. Like Apple, Motorola has a big focus on design. Although their focus takes them on a slightly different path, the value for aesthetic appeal is there nonetheless. The metal-framed phone can be customized with a number of different color frames, front panels, metal accents, and materials. With the iPhone 6s Plus, you have 4 colors, and that's it. And if you only want black on the front, then you only really have one option. If you want to add leather, wood, or a grippy plastic texture, your option is limited to just buying a case. And while Motorola went with a curved back that sits really comfortably in your hand, Apple went with a flat, smooth, all-metal design. Now, Motorola's is obviously the most ergonomic of the two, but in truth both phones are big, and reaching the corners of either screen is a stretch even if you have big hands. Of course, if you have the iPhone, you can double tap the home button and make any content at the top of the screen drop lower, making it far easier to reach. So there is that. But if there's one thing the iPhone has going for it, it's an elegance and a finesse. Although I'm not really a fan of the antenna bands on the back, there's something quite luxurious about the way the glass curves perfectly into the metal chassis around the edges. Sort of creates this really seamless look. Even the protruding camera, the lightning ports, and the machined speaker holes are good to look at. And you have to admire Apple's ability to make really slim devices. At just 7.3mm thin, it's nearly 4mm thinner than the Moto X Style's thickest point. On the flip side though, Apple's insistence on relatively fat bezels means the iPhone 6s Plus is both taller and wider than the Moto X. That's despite the fact its screen is 0.2 inches smaller diagonally. The Moto X has nice slim bezels and still manages to fit in 2 stereo front-facing speakers in a front panel that's 4.3mm shorter than the iPhone's. In terms of day-to-day life, all these differences mean that the Moto X feels more like it belongs in your hand and fits easier into your pocket, while the iPhone 6s is prettier to look at least in my opinion. Onto displays, and very little separates them. Despite being Quad HD resolution, the 5.7-inch LCD panel on the Motorola is almost indistinguishable from the iPhone. Colours and sharpness are pretty much the same on both, despite being different resolutions. The Motorola is maybe slightly cooler and makes the blues pop out a little bit more, but there really isn't anything in it. That's to say they're both very good displays with good viewing angles, colour accuracy and detail. Neither offers the saturation, the deep blacks or the vividity of AMOLED screens, but that's to be expected from LCD tech. One piece of tech built into the iPhone screen which isn't present on the Motorola is 3D Touch. In essence, the touch panel knows how hard you're pressing the screen and can enable special actions within apps or direct from app icons on the home screen. Just from having used them for a little while, it's very easy to get used to, especially when wanting to send a quick text message. I sometimes find myself pressing hard on the Moto X screen, subconsciously hoping something happens. Of course, it never does. And as multimedia experiences go, having a slightly larger screen doesn't quite make the Moto X Style an easy winner over the iPhone. But what does is the stereo speakers. As always, Apple's smartphone has a single loudspeaker placed right on the bottom edge. And this, of course, is where your finger or your palm will undoubtedly rest at some point when watching movies or gaming. That doesn't make for an immersive audio experience. Having 2 speakers blast at your face does though, and being stereo means you get a proper feel for how the audio should sound. As software experiences go, it's the age-old arguments of Android versus iOS, which we don't have time for in this video. Although currently the Moto X doesn't have the latest version of Google's operating system, and that is a downside. It runs Lollipop. But an update to Marshmallow should be coming relatively soon. In most regards, it's a stock Android experience with a few tweaks. iPhones, of course, as long as they're fairly new, always run the latest version of iOS, so you get all the new tweaks and tricks offered by iOS 9. Of course, it goes without saying, if your reason for choosing a phone is based mostly on which platform it runs, the decision is practically made for you already. Putting the OS argument to one side, both phones perform like flagships. The iPhone's powerful dual-core A9 processor powers through most tasks with ease. Running the Geekbench tests reveals why. Its single-core performance is staggeringly high at over 2,500 points, while multi-core performance is still 1,000 higher than the 6-core Snapdragon chip inside the Motorola. But again, when it comes to daily use, you probably won't notice that much difference. Both phones are pretty fast and fluid when it comes to doing everyday tasks, but the iPhone will load graphically intense content a little faster and a little easier. It's a different story with battery life though. The iPhone's battery may have a lower capacity at 2,750 mAh, that's compared to the Motorola's 3,000 mAh, but it does last longer in regular daily use. At least with my own personal usage. On a full charge cycle, I can almost always get to the end of a second day with the iPhone 6s Plus, while the Motorola might get me up to 1.5 days. But there is another argument here. If you want to charge it, the Motorola does do it much quicker. With turbo power, the Motorola can charge almost 70% of its battery in half an hour. That's enough to get you through a full day. Again, like the displays, there's not too much difference in quality of imagery when comparing the Moto X and iPhone. Motorola proudly exclaimed its new camera module is better than the iPhone 6. While that may be the case, it's not really that obvious. Both cameras can take great pictures with good color accuracy and sharpness, but there are subtle differences in coloring and temperature. In lower light, the Motorola tends to boost the brightness, the colors and the contrast, giving a slightly less natural look. And focusing on close-up objects is far easier, quicker, more reliable and accurate on the iPhone too. Of course, both can shoot in 4K resolution and neither will disappoint any consumer in terms of quality really. As an overall package, in many ways, both represent what's best about their respective platforms. The Moto X might not have a fingerprint sensor or a pressure-sensitive display, but everything else about it is superb. As a kicker, the Moto X Pure costs just $399 in the US, SIM-free and unlocked for the 16GB model. The same storage on an iPhone 6s Plus will cost you a princely $749. What's more, you can expand the storage of the Moto X Pure up to an extra 128GB using a microSD card. To get that kind of storage on an iPhone 6s Plus, you're paying nearly $1,000. While the iPhone 6s Plus may be a better all-round package, it's certainly not $350 better, not from a hardware standpoint. You could argue about the added benefits of the app ecosystem, which are undoubtedly better, the long-lasting software support, and of course Apple's customer service. Whether or not you think that's worth the extra money is up to you. I've been Cam, I'm at CamBunton on Twitter, and I'll see you again soon.